What's up, my martial arts nerds? Welcome back to System Breakdowns, where we talk about the overall system, not individual technique selection or like natural attributes, but the system that binds everything together for fighters to create some of the most elite fighters in the world. Today we're talking about one of the most requested videos that I get, which is Tony Ferguson. El Cucuy, the Boogeyman. This guy is amazing. He's a Tough 13 champion. He's an Eddie Bravo 10th Planet black belt. All this stuff. He's got amazing boxing skills. Went on one of the longest win streaks in the UFC history. 12 fights. Really a fantastic fighter and a great model for looking at for systems when we talk about building our own systems. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about what he has done that has allowed him to be so successful. And when you start seeing how this all interweaves, you start seeing things that you can pull into your own game. So that being said, stay tuned. Let's start breaking down the Boogeyman. Okay, so let's start by talking about some of the things that Tony Ferguson does that allows him to be so successful in striking. You might find I bounce around a little bit here, and that's just because of the sheer interweaving of a lot of what's going on. So to begin with, I want to start by talking about range. I describe him as an outside pocket, high volume, high pressure fighter. You're like, what do you mean by outside pocket? He is in the pocket, sort of. What you'll notice is that because of his reach, he's usually got a longer reach than everybody else. And he has a very deceptive ability to maintain range and make them feel like they're in range. And he allows himself to be at range while they're not. This is a big factor in why when he does eat shots, they're usually very glancing. And it seems like he has this like iron chin because he's not actually taking that much damage. And so what he does is this. There's a couple things he does to kind of do this like deceptive range stuff. The first thing is that when he enters, first of all, a lot of times when he enters, he usually enters with a head slip. So that this way, anything that comes in as he's entering the range, this is usually the most dangerous time. When I first move into range, that guys like to catch you as you come in. So anytime he enters in, he does this head slip as he comes in. And then from here, usually what you'll see is his head kind of drops down a little bit. And he's doing this so that this way, it allows him a lot of room to change his range so that as punches come in, he can kind of roll with it and let it glance off of him. But it's also very deceptive because when he throws punches, a frequent habit of his, generally when you throw a punch, your head is above your groin, you're very balanced. He doesn't do that. He kind of leans in on his punches a lot of times, like so. And what this does is it gives a false sense of range so that he hits them from further out. And then when they try to come in, he can pull back and allow things to glance off of him. It's a very common tactic of his to go, right? And just kind of like throw his shots, be able to hit them from a range with these long shots. And then when they throw back at him, to be able to just evade it. A couple other things that he does that are interesting is because he fights so much with this forward pressure, all fighting you have these ebbs and flows. Most fighters, when they have to back up, when somebody throws something, they come out and they reset. It might be a pretty big motion sometimes. He will move back, but it's deceptive in the way that he does. And what I mean by that is this. Most fighters, when they move back, it's a definitive step, right? When he does it, he does a little shuffle, and then he's back in. He's here, he's fighting from this range. He comes in, he drops his head, fights from this range, retreating back, and then he moves back, deceptive, and then shuffle back in. Right? He does this kind of like little foot shuffle, and then he's right back into range. So what it looks like is that he's moving a lot and running away, when in fact it's 1, 2, back in. Pop, pop, pop. It allows him a lot of stance change opportunities off of this as well, because when he comes back in, you're never sure which foot's going to be forward. In fact, sometimes when he enters range, you'll see him do this kind of stuff where he shuffles his feet, so you're not sure which way he's going. The stance switch game is a big factor in his deception. It also is really important for when we talk about defending leg kicks and stuff like that. In addition to that, some of the other things he does is win guards when they start getting too much into the clash. Sometimes what you'll see is as he gets in here, sometimes guys clash in here like that clinch range. What I find interesting is a lot of times what he'll do is he rolls out of stuff to escape. So as he comes in here, he's willing to punch through stuff, and if he steps in front of him, he rolls out, and a lot of times what he uses is this kind of like elbowing back technique. He actually has a combination we'll talk about later on where he deliberately goes for it, but sometimes just in the moment he's here and he just extends that elbow out to create space. This way if guys do try to catch his back, he's able to frame off of them. It's very hard to exploit that. There have been guys who have done it like Cowboy Cerrone, and he has solutions for that, but he's not really that worried about it because of that rollout that he does. Other things I want to talk about is inside position is really important for him defensively, because as he's in here and he's throwing stuff, as guys start throwing stuff, he just kind of keeps his hands in here to kind of absorb a lot of what's going on. Or he'll throw up, like he'll put up his shoulders as he rolls back to allow stuff to absorb. So most of what it looks like is going to hit him from this close range. He's just so good at absorbing because of deceptive range and throwing guys off here. You know, this type of stuff, slipping as he enters, coming in forward, coming back, jabbing, and then throwing stuff in between to kind of absorb a lot of stuff. It actually makes him very hard to cleanly hit. When in turn, he's throwing a lot back at you. And when you're dealing with that high volume, it doesn't give you as many countering opportunities. And when you do throw, a lot of it is kind of nullified by what he's doing. So that's the majority of his defense. So the next part we're going to come in, we're going to start talking about entries and talking about his actual offensive and countering tactics. All right, guys, so now let's talk about some of his entries, feinting, general attacks, and even some counters here. The first thing I want to note is that, you know, one of the things I like about him is his kind of spazzy jerkiness to his movements. You know, we talked about Valentina Shevchenko. She does something kind of similar where she has a very spazzy feel because she's very jittery almost in the way that she fights. And so it's hard to know when she's going to pull the trigger. He does something kind of similar, but it's that same kind of like weirdness to his movement where it's very jerky, and that jerkiness makes it hard to read when he's going to pull the trigger, right? It's a lot of this stuff. So you're not sure when it's going to come because he's already so like kind of like moving around a lot as he's coming in here. And so when you have that kind of a behavior, it's very hard to kind of identify what the moment is he's going to throw or what he's going to throw. This is part of his deception. On top of that, he throws things from a lot of weird angles as he enters. First, let's talk about kind of his long-range entry. One of the things you'll notice he does a lot is as guys are on the outside, he's starting to move in, you see him throw a lot of these leg inside kicks to chase guys back. You'll see him do this as many times as he needs to chase guys until he gets back into the range and he can start coming in with these long punches again. He attacks with a lot of different angles on stuff. So he'll throw these long uppercuts. Instead of this conventional tight uppercut, he throws it from out here, right? So it's just a different, unique angle. And most guys are not used to this kind of a long uppercut the way that he throws it. He also does a lot of these snapping back fist techniques so that his punches are not coming in the same straight manner as most people do. It might come here, it might come underneath. So it's a jab, but it's also kind of not a jab because he's changing angle, height, direction, all this stuff. It makes it very hard to kind of identify where that jab's going to go to. Because sometimes this same motion occurs from here, and then at the last second he determines snapping back fist, uppercut, jab, hook. Basically, until at this point of his punch, you're not sure what's coming. And that makes it very hard to kind of read, especially when you add in all this jerky stuff. So that's kind of how he punches. But on top of that, then he has a lot of these kicking techniques that he throws in there that are very deceptive. Whenever you see him throw a lot of these, you know, he throws a lot of these inside leg kicks that he uses to throw these punch combinations after and tie them in. So sometimes he'll do 1, 2, pop, 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 right? And he'll make it part of a combination. Sometimes it's an entry. What he really loves to do is this midsection front kick. We talked about this before with a lot of these city kickboxing guys do this. Especially long fighters really love this technique because it drops guys' hands. And the way that he does it, he's really good at throwing it as part of his entry so you can't see that it's coming. It's just part of, right? Everything from here up stays the same. And when you add in, like I said, the jerkiness, you're not sure when this is going to come. A lot of times when he throws this, he might throw it once or twice from the outside, but then he starts throwing it and following it with that same side punch. He loves to do that as he comes in here. Right? And so this is kind of like part of the weirdness of what he does because he constantly enters with these kicks that are just outside the vision and gives you a very late response time. He'll tag guys with this over and over again, but what he's really looking to do is drop hands. From there, then he starts putting them together in combinations, like I said. So it might be the front kick jab, or it might be uppercut cross, front kick jab, leg kick, jab cross, front kick jab. And so he just kind of makes this part of his combinations Where his regular boxing combinations, all of a sudden he'll break and throw a kick in there. Other techniques that he does, let's kind of get into some of his combinations that you'll see. He's got a couple of combinations that he'll go to. We already talked about how he does the spin out technique. Sometimes he makes this deliberate, where from here, he deliberately throws this long cross, and he tries to catch him, and then he turns this into a spinning elbow. And so he'll do stuff, sometimes he goes for the cross, but sometimes he also deliberately misses, getting them think like, kind of their hands out here. I've seen him do this on other occasions with other punches too, where he'll throw like a back fist out here, and throw his cross down here, and he's trying to get their hands up. And all he's trying to do is pull their hands and their guard away by going just outside of their actual attack. And I think when he does this technique, he does the same thing, where he punches the cross here to get them thinking about it. But really what he's looking for is that spinning elbow. And he's really good at landing this. Other things I want to talk about too is like trapping. I know he does some Wing Chun and stuff like that, but he's also just a big fan of pulling down hands as they start getting in the way. If guys guard up here tight a lot, sometimes he's just more than content to just grab a hand and punch, grab a hand, elbow over the top, or sometimes he'll do stuff like feint to an elbow, but he likes to trap a lot whenever he comes in. And especially when guys reach out a lot, he likes top position and inside position. So after he throws, it's inside position. As he's entering, he likes top position. That's a big part of it. From there, let's see. Other offensive techniques, most of it is, like I said, just kind of mixing up the different long techniques, punching off to the side, trapping, front kick here. That's the type of stuff he likes to go to a lot. Okay. Then when we start talking about counters, it's interesting because he has a couple things that he does that are like consistent counters he likes to go for. One is that as he's in here, we already talked about how he kind of rolls back out of range. So he'll come in here, and as guys go to throw, he absorbs it, glances, and then catches them on the way in. This is part of the reason his shots hit so hard, is that he catches guys on the entry. So he comes in here, you know, he might be doing this kind of stuff, and as they throw, he pulls his head back, allows us to absorb off of it, and then throws his jab as part of this. So anytime you're catching him with a punch, expect him to come back. The other thing he does is, and you see this more from southpaw with him, but he will do it both sides, but he definitely prefers it on southpaw. He'll come in here, and he'll force guys to throw, whiff, and then come over top with it. That's a technique he loves to hit, is forcing that overextension whiff, and then once he gets that, pop, right back in on him. He really likes that kind of deception of like, pull counter. Oh, you think I'm not going to go, and then I'm going to go. And where you really see this is sometimes you'll actually see him do this runaway stuff, and as guys come out, it's right back into it. He'll do this on shorter versions where like he'll come in here, and as guys go to chase him, oh, here, right? But on longer versions, sometimes he'll go as far as to run away a bit, and go right back at him. So if you start to chase back after him, and it seems like he's running away, he's really just luring you into a sudden directional change. He loves hitting that stuff. And then from there, he's got a couple other counters that I really enjoy. One of them is that his use of the Darce for guys who roll under a lot. While he couldn't do this to Justin Gaethje, he's done this to a bunch of other guys. Because a common tendency for a lot of guys is to drop their heads in the pocket. So he knows this, so what does he do? He throws a punch and he's ready to slip this hand underneath and get right here on the Darce. And then what he does is he kind of sits through. And we'll talk about his Darce a little bit more later on. But essentially, he just slides his arm underneath, gets over top, and falls back. One of the things I want to kind of point out on this is I feel like at this point in MMA, the best jiu-jitsu guys in UFC right now are using Darce chokes. They're not using guillotines. Why? Because guillotines get escaped all the time. I feel like if you can't hit a guillotine standing, if you're on the ground, their chance of escaping at that level is very high. They're all very good at defending the guillotine because it happens so much. And I feel like it's a much more escapable choke. Whereas the Darce, it's a lot more synced in. Like once you get over that arm, under the head, come over the top, from right here, it's very hard for them to get out of, and they have to expend a lot more energy to escape it. And so using this as a counter is really interesting, so that as, you know, he knows a common tendency of a lot of guys is to start dropping as they throw stuff, And so he uses this and he comes underneath and he catches that. It's a really interesting adaptation to a common tendency. And this is the type of stuff I'm talking about when you talk about systems. When you build your system, identify common responses to it and build in unique solutions for that common response so that when you come across this, you can exploit it. And he's so good at picking that up on the moment. Other things that I kind of want to mention on real quick while I finish up the striking is just output is a big factor for him. I think this is a pretty well-known thing. He likes to increase the tempo, and as he clips somebody, the tempo increases. And most people will do this, like they'll clip somebody like, oh, and they'll go after him for a few seconds. He doesn't just do it for a few seconds, but for a few minutes. Once he catches somebody, right, he's starting to really tee off on him, and he's going to keep this pressure going as long as he can for several minutes, usually for the rest of the round. And so that person feels like they're constantly under duress, and they don't get a break in there. And on top of that, once he feels like somebody's endurance is starting to slip, he turns his up. He's one of those guys that believes in his stamina is so high that the ability to have a higher stamina is a big weapon of his. And once he knows that their stamina bar is starting to drop, he's going to increase the tempo on them a lot. Which is why in the earlier rounds, he seems to take more damage. But as the fight progresses on, he becomes much more dangerous. He's a far more dangerous 3rd to 5th round fighter than he is a 1st round fighter. Far more. He's a guy that, honestly, if you're going to beat, you got to beat him in the 1st round, because as that fight progresses, he's just going to increase his tempo as your stamina starts to drop. And that's a really important thing to kind of discuss with him. And same thing with, like, when he puts guys against the cage, that's even more obvious, because he doesn't get put against the cage himself a lot, because, like I said, if guys do back up, he's right back in, right? He does the shuffle step, and he's right back at him. Or he runs away, pow, and he comes right back into him. So he doesn't get pushed back a lot, but because of the way that he attacks and that constant pressure, high volume, guys back up on him a lot, so he chases him with the leg kicks, and he starts putting him up against the cage. This is where his output once again increases, and he starts being even more threatening. You'll see a lot of front kicks against the cage. You also see a lot of jumping knees and stuff like that against the cage, and then he starts kind of teeing off in here, and really kind of increasing the tempo to try to drop him from against the cage. So what I'm saying is that against the cage, where most guys, they're going to seize this as an opportunity to get takedowns. Not Tony Ferguson. He sees this as an opportunity to start lighting them up with more punches and increasing the volume, making it harder for them to defend. And if they run away, no problem. He'll chase after them, hit that leg kick again, and go right back to it. Constantly chasing them all the way around the ring. He wants them to run away because he wants them to get tired. Once again, the output is in his favor. So that's really the majority of the striking. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of his grappling responses and some of his escapes when he gets clipped and stuff like that. And then, of course, his fantastic close guard. So stay tuned. Alright guys, so now let's start talking about some of the wrestling, grappling, and escapes and stuff like that. The first thing I want to talk about is he likes to roll a lot whenever he has to create space. He loves Granby rolls. He loves, break falls and stuff like that to try to get out of bad situations. One of the areas that you'll see him use it from striking a lot is, and I'm going to have to come over this way a lot so I have room, is when he gets clipped, a lot of guys, when they get clipped, they're trying to turn back in, they're going to clinch, stuff like that. What he does that's unique is when he gets clipped, he immediately starts dropping, and he's going to shoulder roll his way through it, like so. He extends out to create as much space as he can. I just am limited by space. Other things that you'll see that are on a similar note is, we talked about how a lot of times he likes to throw stuff, and as he gets overstepped here in this kind of like clash-in area, instead of going to a clinch, he elbows out. Obviously, this creates opportunities for guys to grab his back. Same thing when guys try to put him up against the cage. He's usually quick to escape. He pries the hands free and stuff like that. He doesn't linger here. If somebody does put him up against the cage, he's going to pummel in and create space to get out of there. But on the opportunity that somebody does grab his back, what you'll see him do, his first opportunity, he's going to try to, break this off, get his hips out and stuff like that. But if he doesn't do that, you will immediately start seeing him coming down here and going for that knee bar, pulling the foot through, and trying to roll through into the knee bar. Aside from that, we're going to get back into some of the other rolling stuff in a minute. Actually, let's stay on it since we're on this. The only thing you're going to see him do a lot of rolling with is recovering to close guard. Whenever he's on the ground, this guy loves being in the closed guard. That's his default. And so if he does get taken down and put in like a side control, what you're going to frequently see is he's going to turn away, lift his butt in the air, and then he's going to use this to Granby roll back. One of the things I find interesting about the way that he does this, though, is that in order to create space to keep guys from driving in, and this is something I had not been doing. I don't know if it's something that most guys do because it's not something that's normally in my repertoire. It's not usually how I escape from side control. But what he does that I find interesting is that as he starts to come up, he pushes the head back and then he rolls back into it. It's just a little bit of an interesting thing that I noticed in how he does it as he pops up and recovers back in the closed guard, as opposed to just bumping the hips up, which is usually sufficient. But I think at that level, because guys are driving in so hard, they're so athletic, I think sometimes he feels like he has to do that. Let's see. From there, wrestling prevention, he's fantastic at because of that high volume. But if guys do go to shoot on him, he's got great wrestling, and he's really good at sprawling on top of guys, keeping the fight standing. If guys do take him down, though, he doesn't care. The majority of his wrestling defense, he will sprawl on a guy if he shoots on him, but he obviously doesn't care if he gets taken down. It just doesn't even bother him because his closed guard is just fantastic. So let's talk about this a little bit. Now, when he recovers to a closed guard, there's a couple things that he really likes to do. The first thing that he does that I really enjoy is his use of the elbow. I think descending elbow strikes from this closed guard is the best weapon you could use. You know, these little rabbit punches are okay. And of course you have the old school Gracie, like heel kicks. But honestly, what works the best, in my opinion, is descending elbow strikes. And what's interesting is not only does he do it to the head, but he'll do it to the collarbone as well and start driving it right into that collarbone, which is pretty brutal if you think about it, because that's a very small bone and it's easy to break. And if you can start breaking collarbones in here, oh man, how brutal is that? From here, he has a couple other things that he likes to do. One of the things he likes to do, of course, is he likes to do a lot of this rubber guard stuff. I'm not going to do a lot of it because I am old and I'm not trying to do that with my legs. The thing about rubber guard that's great is it's fantastic for MMA because it's young guys who are trying to get wins. They're willing to put a little bit more abuse on their joints. I personally am not willing to regularly do that to myself and have somebody trying to posture up, inside this rubber guard and stuff like that. But he will use this a lot of times to facilitate things like getting to his triangles and stuff like that. He has a whole bunch of nasty stuff. He'll do omoplatas off it, all that stuff. It's all that 10th planet rubber guard stuff. But the other thing that he'll do is he's got some other really nice techniques that he'll attack in the closed guard. One of the things I find interesting, and this is not something you see a lot, is he likes to reach through a lot to get to this leg to start going through and attacking for leg locks. It's not a normal attack that you see attacking from the closed guard, but he's got such great mobility and great flexibility that I think he feels comfortable being able to hit it. But the other thing that he's looking for as well is if he doesn't feel like he's getting the success he wants, whether it's the striking or attacking submissions, the triangles and stuff, sometimes he'll get his feet on the inside, open them up. It doesn't work as well here where the guy's not like sitting back on it, but this is a tactic I do all the time in jiu-jitsu where I get my feet underneath and I start opening them up this way so I can start putting my feet on the hips, backing them up, and start kicking them. So what you end up in a situation where, depending on where they go, they're always in danger inside his closed guard. If they try to stay tight and postured and keep their head down, he's going to just keep elbow striking them. If they continue to stand here, he's going to start going for his mission control, threatening triangles and stuff like that, and keeping their posture so that they can't strike him. This is a big theme of his. He is never in danger of somebody dropping bombs on him in the closed guard. But if that doesn't work, he's going to put his feet on the hips and he's going to start kicking them back. So he's always a threat in his closed guard, and he himself is almost never in any real danger. And meanwhile, from other positions, all of his game plan is about get to closed guard. You put him in half guard, he gets put in half guard, okay, he's going to get back to his closed guard, right? You get into a side control on him, he gets to closed guard. So it's very tough to have a successful game plan against him. I think the closest I've seen is Kevin Lee managed to get him in a mount, and even then he managed to defend in here, keep the inside position, create a little bit of space, and he was getting out, and then the round ended. So from the ground, he is one of the most threatening closed guards that you'll find because he has simple solutions to dealing with these problems, and most of it involves keeping their posture down so they can't successfully strike, and being a threat from submission and striking within the closed guard. That's pretty much it. Oh, the other thing I wanted to talk about for offensively now. Let's talk about the Darce. This is something he loves to go to, not only from standing, but of course he'll do it on the ground if somebody comes in. And this is what I was talking about where, like, you know, the guillotine, guys start to come in for this guillotine here, whether they're doing the arm in, closed guard, or they're doing this fall back to one side. But what happens is in this day and age, especially as the round goes on, guys will take their time and eventually they're going to get out. It just happens. But instead, by going to a Darce, this is a much more dominant position. And what he does that I find interesting is most of the time when I do a Darce, I'm putting a guy down and I'm trying to get on top and sit on him here. When he does a Darce, he's okay with falling underneath them. He'll get to here and come underneath them this way and trap this arm with his legs and just hang out here. And if he gets the choke, great. If not, he's attacking their wind. He's burning them out because they're struggling to breathe. They're struggling to get out. They're constricted. They're tired. It's going to put a drain on them. And if he gets a choke, even better. But he'll do this, like I said, from standing where, you know, he'll get in here, get to that Darce, and fall through it and sit on his back. It's just an interesting way of doing it. I personally prefer from a Darce, I'm trying to put that guy on the ground. I always like top position, but he likes fighting from the bottom, so it works for him. The only thing that you'll see when he does get to the top, most of the time what you're going to see is he's going to do enough punching and just start attacking aggressively, forcing a turn away. And then what he loves to do is start attacking things like Crucifix and start coming in here, and he'll just continue to attack, try to go for Crucifix position like he's going to sit through on it and stuff like that. But even if he doesn't get it, man, what a great position. I love Crucifix from, you know, I love it from side control. I love it from turtle. I just love Crucifix because it's such a tying a position where it gives you so many striking opportunities off of here. And Crucifix to me in fighting and MMA is not about going for submissions. It's just about tying them up to be able to strike it well. And once you get him there, it's so hard to escape and navigate out of that. And this is what he's great at, is like he'll get on top of somebody. If he does knock him down, and let's say he ends up in a half guard, he's just going to start pounding on him and force the turn away, because a lot of these guys are wrestlers, and their natural reaction is to start doing this, and then he's going to start coming in here, getting a leg, coming over the top, and then it's all day long. So that's the majority of his system. You know, the guy's jiu-jitsu is fantastic. He's just one of those guys that, you know, he's so experienced from so many places, and he has such a unique attributes in his flexibility and his length. It allows him to do a lot. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Make sure you throw in the comments what you thought of it, and if there's other stuff that you feel like I should have added, or things that you noticed about him, or things that you're pulling from this to put into your game. Let me know how this is working for you. Because I'll tell you what, doing these system breakdowns has really improved my game. I learned so much from doing these, and I hope you do as well. Thanks for watching, guys.